we want to talk briefly about is the market as we see it from our discussions with our clients, with tenants, with landlords over the last weeks and months. I think everyone can agree COVID-19 was a crisis no one has foreseen, and the impacts will be long-lasting. We just go to our market overview slide over here. What we basically see, we're right now in the middle on the left-hand side. We see, okay, we're in the reopening phase. We have a lockdown, depending on which country you're from, between 6 and 10 weeks. Stores were closed, the consumer were totally shell-shocked, and the life as such just stopped for several weeks or months. And right now, are we back to normal? Well, it seems like that from our perspective. We are picking up. But what we also see from different surveys we conduct with consumers is that the way consumers see shopping, the shopping experience just changed dramatically. They are asking more for e-commerce, like they shop online and expect their brands to deliver it at home, or they got only the chance to pick it up in the store. So they say online, I want to buy this or that good, and I just come in the shop, pick it up, and leave directly. And what we see over the last 1 to 2 weeks, at least in Germany, is that the reduced traffic just started to go up a bit, but we're not there where we've been pre-COVID-19. On the other hand, we see that over the last weeks or months, several retailers do not just make it. The weeks and months of lockdown were just too much for them. We saw, I think, for instance, Debenham went insolvency in UK, Karstadt Kaufhof and Esprit are brands in Germany, which likely will not survive this crisis. And we think that if you want to be successful as a brand, as a retailer, you just have to understand that the way you did shopping, the consumers did shopping they used to be, will not be the same in the future. We think we will see a mix of home shopping and shopping at home via laptop, and some kind of store picking up. But we will not return soon to the way it used to be. And we can see, for instance, in the UK, we can see that will highly impact the market rent. We see decrease 25 to 50% in new market contracts. And the way we see it right now is that tenants and landlords are in this mess, so to speak, together, and so they have to join forces and find solutions that they can survive, because they are so interdependent. And that is why we think there needs to start discussions. And I think with this really brief overview, I just want to hand over to my colleague Christiane, who will go into more details what we see in the market at the moment going on and how potential solutions can look like.
Thank you very much, Thorsten. I hope you can all hear me. When you look at this economic development on the one hand and compare it with provisions in European retail lease agreements on the other hand, one can notice that most lease agreements need to be amended to better cope with these rapid economic changes, which is pretty clear for the current pandemic. But also going forward, there will be a change at least we expect a significant change of the retail market. And as I said before, when you look at the lease agreements, there is a need to amend the agreements to better prepare both parties of the lease agreement to deal with these changes in a collaborative way. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we are quite active right now in our pan-European leasing projects. And in these projects, we have basically identified two main aspects which should be considered when renegotiating retail lease agreements, in order to put both parties in a better position. And as I said before, not only to to deal with the current pandemic, but also with the ongoing changes in the retail sector in a fair and collaborative way. Firstly, in almost all jurisdictions, neither standard clauses in lease agreements nor statutory provisions or case law give really a clear answer as to whether the rent was reduced during lockdown and the reopening period. So this will basically need to be decided by the courts in the next couple of years, and we don't expect a clear guidance from the higher courts in Germany, for example, in this regard before next year at the very earliest. And due to this uncertainty, there's actually a great need for both parties to the lease agreement to implement special pandemic or force majeure clauses, to not only deal with the restrictions which we've seen over the last couple of weeks and months, but also with potential future second and third waves of the COVID-19 pandemic. And the second aspect we've identified in the project is that it is in the best interest of both parties to implement more flexibility into the lease agreement. For example, from a landlord's point of view, it might be beneficial to agree on more provisions which give him more flexibility when it comes to relocations of rented premises and to reconstruct the shopping malls. And from a tenant's point of view, we basically see the need to have more flexibility in the lease agreement when it comes to the term of the lease, but also the type of the use, operating obligations, and obligations to sell specific product ranges. For example, in Germany, the Federal Court of Justice even ruled in February, so before the restrictions of the current pandemic, that a combination of clauses requiring the tenant to open every day for several hours and to sell only a specific range of products, while excluding any protection against competition, unduly limits the tenant's ability to operate its business in the rented premises. So, and as a consequence, the court found that the provision excluding protection against competition shall be invalid. And also this decision kind of confirms the need to check all retail lease agreements right now, if these agreements give also the tenant enough freedom to successfully operate its business and to adapt to economic changes. In our perception, several professional landlords are willing to take this into consideration. Of course, we also see the first court proceedings where landlords are trying to enforce all potential claims for full rental payments during the lockdown period and refuse to start negotiations. But this approach might be more taken by smaller private landlords who only own one or just a few buildings. The vast majority of landlords appear to be willing to start negotiations, and some of them have already started negotiations with collaborative tenants in order to find a way to manage the current crisis together, as Thorsten said. So this is really unique right now and is a good basis for contract negotiations. I think anybody understands that the current situation is not caused by either one of the parties, and you can only get through it together. We would like to share what we have learned in the last couple of weeks in our project. And as we think these recommendations will not only benefit one party, but will benefit both landlords and tenants in the long terms. What you can see here is basically 6 recommendations, starting with the flexibility. So as I said before, it's beneficial not to have rigid, strict provisions in the lease agreements, but really take into consideration what flexibility you need in the future to successfully run the business in the premises. For example, restrictions of type of use might be extended that to allow different types of the extension of e-commerce business in the rental premises, which was could have been particularly helpful during the complete lockdown, the closure for the public. And then I think you see it there in black. The first main point is really important, and I want to understand that both landlords and tenants are willing to share upsides and downsides by turnover rents. And when this is being discussed, it's quite important that it goes both ways and not one party is put to a disadvantage. And another aspect in this regard is such provision in the lease agreement should allow for monthly or quarterly payment adjustments versus the annual adjustments which we see right now, which we have been seeing for the last, say 2 decades in the lease agreements. Then I mentioned it before, it's we don't hope so, but a second or third wave are likely, so it's important to implement some pandemic or force majeure clauses in the lease agreements to be prepared for that and find a solution, and not starting the negotiations all over again if another lockdown happens. Then what is also particularly in Germany a big topic, and is also being brought into the negotiations with the landlords, but this is I understand that yes, several other European countries have the same situation, where you might have invalid clauses in the lease agreements, for example on service charges or repair works, or in Germany also the written form requirement. And so when these negotiations happening right now, landlords and tenants also look at the overall agreement and see if there is anything which should be healed in the amendment, and providing for more legal certainty in this regard. Then what we also see, due to the several restrictions by the authority, the ongoing pandemic, we have much more health and safety requirements all over Europe, and we have an increased operator responsibility, which is quite a big liability risk, and should be carefully reviewed by both parties. And it's in the best interest of both parties to sit down and discuss, and really also document which party of the lease agreement has to comply with which obligation. And last but not least, and Thorsten has mentioned it before, we strongly recommending ESG compliant clauses, or the green leases clauses, into the lease agreement. This is to increase user satisfaction, reduce service charges and life cycle costs, and but also to be compliant with future regulation, in particular the EU Sustainable Finance taxonomy, which is right now on the top of the agenda of most institutional landlords.